Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Just Law on IQRA TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia. This is the second part to the show. Just before the break, just before we received a number of calls, we were looking at spouse applications. In particular, we were looking at how the financial requirement has to be met when making a spouse application. Now, we'll go into that in greater detail, but obviously this is a live show, so whatever questions that you have on any aspect of immigration law, please feel free to pick up the phone and give me a ring on the number that appears at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so let's look at this financial requirement. As I said, it's 18,600 per annum. Generally speaking, there are exceptions to that. And the other key thing with this financial requirement is that there are certain documents that need to be submitted to demonstrate the 18,600 per annum income. So it's a twofold thing that needs to be done. The income requirement has to be met. The documentary evidence requirement has to be met as well. So that's essentially what we're looking at when we're looking at the financial requirement for spouses who want to come to the United Kingdom. And this is an area which causes the most problems, and it's an area which leads to the vast majority of refusals. And it's either the case that the sponsor in the UK who's trying to sponsor their husband or wife to come to the UK, they're not earning £18,600 per annum, or what's more likely is that they are earning the money that's required, but it's the second requirement, the documents that need to be submitted which aren't submitted in accordance with the immigration rules. So the income is fine, but there's a problem with the documentary evidence. So, okay, starting point always is, does the sponsor earn 18,600 per annum? Now, there are some exceptions to that. If the spouse in the UK sponsoring the husband or wife to come to the United Kingdom, if the spouse in the UK, the sponsor in the UK is disabled or caring for somebody who's disabled, you fall within an exemption, so you don't need to worry about the 18,600 per annum income. Other than that, in the vast majority of cases, the income has to be £18,600 per annum. Now, the rules which exists relating to this £18,600 per annum, which you've heard me mention a few times. If you go to an immigration lawyer for advice, they'll go on about this £18,600 per annum requirement as well. That can be met from different sources of income. Now, I'll run through what those sources of income are, but the key thing that you've got to remember is you can meet the requirement through different sources of income, and if you do, there are specific rules which set out how that source of income has to be demonstrated. So what are these different sources of income? So it's not simply income from employment which will satisfy the £18,600 per annum income. You could have income from self-employment. So you could be a director of a company, or you could be a sole trader. You might be a taxi driver, you do your accounts April to March every year, you're a sole trader. So you could meet this income requirement not through employment, it could be through self-employment. You could be a partner in a business, you could be a director in a limited company with a shareholding where you get a dividend income and a salary as well. So it's not pure employment where you're working for somebody, it's self-employment, and even self-employment has different types of self-employment. Or it could be that you receive an income which is rental income. Now that may be enough in itself, or it may have to be added to other types of income. Or it could be that you have significant savings. It could be that you're meeting the income requirement by demonstrating that you have sufficient savings, which when converted using their formula amounts to sufficient income. It could be that you get certain state benefits such as state pension, which may be counted as income as well. It may be that the sponsor in the UK, you've separated from a previous partner and you receive child maintenance. It may be that you can count that as income as well. So there are different types of income, and the immigration rules cater for that. So it's not just the fact that, oh, you must be employed by somebody for the last 6 months or the last 12 months. It's not as simple as that. There are different types of income that the immigration rules will take into account, whether you're employed, you're self-employed, you've got rental income, you've got savings, you've got certain non-contributory benefits, non-means tested benefits that you receive. It could be a whole host of different types of income that you receive to meet this 18,600 requirement. And not only that, it could be that you may have to combine your income. You might have a bit of salary coming in, you might have rental income coming in, you might have savings as well. So you might be combining your income as well. Now, what the immigration rules, what they do is initially they'll set out what type of income is acceptable, which income can be combined with another type of income. And then, as I said at the outset, the key thing is with each category, the immigration rules will set out what kind of documents do you need to submit. So before we go into more detail, let me give you an example. If you're working for somebody and you've been working for a period of 6 months, then it would be quite simple. You would show the fact that you meet the income requirement by simply submitting the last 6 months wage slips, last 6 months bank statements and an employer's letter. Straightforward, 3 documents that you would submit. Now contrast that with somebody who is self-employed. They will submit significantly more documents. So for example, if they're operating a limited company, they may have to submit their tax return, their business bank statements, proof that the business is registered, and then if it's dividend income, it might be dividend vouchers, personal bank statements showing receipt of dividend, etc. So it could be much more complicated as opposed to the first example that I gave, where somebody is simply employed by a business somewhere and been working there for the last 6 months. So the key thing is you need to look at what the source of income is. If you're combining your source of income, is it possible to combine it with other income? And then finally, the most important bit is you've got this income, it meets the 18,600 requirement. Now what documents do you need to submit? So that's how you essentially look at meeting the financial requirement for spouses. What I'll do next is go through the most common scenario, which is you've got somebody who's been working for an employer for at least 6 months. So they've got a job, the sponsor here, they've got a job and they've been working for the last 6 months, and the income requirement which applies to them, if they're not combining other sources of income, they'll need to meet the 18,600 income requirement from their employment. So that's your typical situation. In practice, what you tend to find is the vast majority of applications, I'd say 70–80% of applications are made by applicants where the sponsor, the spouse in the UK, has been in employment for 6 months and is receiving an income of £18,600 per annum. They're the simplest of cases to deal with because the documentary evidence that you need to submit is, when compared to other areas, is not that problematic. It's quite simple in one sense. So this financial requirement, this 18,600 requirement, in your typical scenario, somebody's been working for 6 months for a business. They want to sponsor their husband or wife to come to the UK. What documents do they need to submit? Now there are 5 documents that the Home Office says that you should submit. 3 documents are mandatory, 2 documents are optional. So the mandatory documents are your 6 months of wage slips, 6 months of bank statements and an employment letter. The optional documents, which you don't need to submit, and it doesn't harm your case if you don't submit them, is your P60 and your contract of employment. They're optional, you don't need to submit them, so let's not worry about them. The key documents are, for a spouse who's in the UK working for 6 months, they've got to get their 6 months of wage slips, 6 months of bank statements, and an employment letter. Now, although it sounds simple, there are various rules governing what each of those requirements entail, how each of those requirements need to be fulfilled, and we'll break it down. We'll look at that in a bit more detail. Now, as I said, in practice, the key thing is meeting the financial requirement. That's where the vast majority of refusals are. So if you're looking at sponsoring your husband or wife to come to the United Kingdom, really the key thing is that you meet the financial requirement properly. Now, the first key document that I've referred to is 6 months of wage slips. The starting point here always is to look at what kind of employment do you have. Is it that you're on a fixed salary, or are you, which is common, are you an hourly paid employee? A lot of people who work in a factory will be hourly paid, so their income depends on the hours that they work. It could vary from week to week. So that's the first thing you need to look at. And whichever one you go for, if it's that you're on a fixed salary, your salary must be 18,600 per annum, and you must have received that money for the duration of the 6 months. If you're an hourly paid employee, you work in a care home, you work in a factory, etc., your income varies depending on the hours that you work, then you need to add up your income for the last 6 months to see whether you've earned the equivalent of 18,600. Let's take our next call before we return to this topic. Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Ji walaikum salam.
I'm calling from Yorkshire.
Okay.
Basically, I want to call my mom over from Pakistan on
Okay.
visitor visa.
Okay.
So if you could please detail what I need from here and
Okay.
what she will need over there,
Has your
and
mum-
where does the application submit, over here or in Pakistan?
Okay. Has your mum been to the United Kingdom before?
No, it will be the first.
The first time. All right. Okay. And in terms of just looking at you as the sponsor, are you employed or are you self-employed?
I am employed.
You're employed. All right. Okay. And in relation to your mum who's abroad, is your dad coming? Is your dad there as well, or what's
That's right. She's dependent on
on your dad? Yeah, she's dependent on your dad.
Yeah.
All right. And in terms of their income, do they have an income of their own, or do you send money from here? What's the financial situation like?
That is a retired school teacher, so if he gets pension, and to be honest,
Right.
it's dependent, to be honest. I do send money, but they don't
Yeah.
rely on this money, to be honest.
All right. Okay. It could be retired school teacher. I mean, generally, from what I've seen, is that their income is quite reasonable. That the pension is okay. All right. Okay, that's fine. That gives me some idea. So essentially, the application is an online application. Whether it's filled in here, filled in there, it doesn't matter. Whether it's paid for here or there, it doesn't matter. But the key point is, wherever it's done, whether it's done here or Pakistan, your mum will need to go to the visa centre to submit her passport. But you could do the online application here if you don't want to use an agent there. Do the online application, make a payment as well, and the documents, which I'm going to come on to, so, scan and submit the documents online here. So because it's all online, it doesn't really matter where you do it. Online application, payment and documents, it's all online, so it doesn't matter where you do it. But the key thing is, wherever it's done, ultimately mum will have to go to the visa centre to submit her passport. Now, the key thing with this is, what, as you said, what do we need? What documents is it?
Yes.
Now, the way you're going to look at it is that your documents are being submitted for the Home Office to be satisfied that when your mum comes here, she'll have somewhere to live and she's not going to be a burden on the state. So how do you demonstrate that? Well, we show, look, you're British, submit your last 3 months of wage slips to show that you're employed earning money, submit your 3 months of bank statements to show the money coming in and the savings that you have, and some evidence of your property. It might be your deeds or tenancy agreement, whatever it is. If your wife's working, So we submit her documents, a copy of her passport, her wage slips and her bank statements. Now the key point behind that is just to show that, you know what, mum has a place to live and that financially you've got enough money to look after her. That's the easy part. So literally it is passport, wage slips, bank statements, accommodation proof. It's really as simple as that, along with a covering letter. You don't even need to do a declaration to a solicitor. A covering letter simply saying, I'm inviting my mum here, she's going to be coming for 2 months, she's going to stay with me, I'm going to look after her financially while she's here, and she's going to live with me. And here are my documents, passports, wage slips, bank statements, proof of accommodation. So here they're looking at, you can look after her financially and accommodate her. In Pakistan, I'm assuming she's in Pakistan, what they're looking at is whether she will go back or not. So whatever documents you submit from Pakistan is to demonstrate that she will go back to Pakistan after the visit. So it's the intention to return, which the documents are dealing with that, are trying to demonstrate that she does have the intention to return. The problem with the Home Office is the way they look at a person's intention to return is to look at whether they have an incentive to return. And when they look at whether somebody has an incentive to return, they look at what are their financial circumstances like. So their financial circumstances are not being proven to show that they've got enough money to come for the trip, because that's what you're there for. Their financial documents are there to demonstrate that they live in financial circumstances and they will go back. So what do you show? Dad's there, so you'll put your dad's passport in to show he's there, Shnakti card in to show he's there. You'd show what income is coming in, any proof that it is pension income that's coming in, so they put their bank statements in. If they own their own house, they'll put evidence of that in. If they own land and other properties, they'll put that in. If they've got external other income coming in, such as rental income, you'll put proof of that in. If there are other close family members like children who are there, you'll put proof of that in. So what you're demonstrating is, look, we live in comfortable I've got a husband, so I've got somebody to go back to. I live in comfortable circumstances. My husband earns sufficient money every month. Here's the proof. I've got other family here. I've got my own house. I've got other assets and income. So that's the kind of documents you're putting in. Not to show that they've got enough money to come here, but simply to show that they have an incentive to go back. So essentially that's what you're looking at. Here, online application is straightforward, payment and all that is straightforward. It's getting the right documents in, documents which paint a picture of somebody who can be looked after here and somebody who will go back to Pakistan after the visit. So essentially that's what you're doing. It's getting that together. Now, sometimes the Pakistan documents, getting them together, it's too problematic. They simply use a good agent in Pakistan who would be able to collate and put that all together. But the key thing is you need somebody who knows what they're doing there and who spends a bit of time to get it right and not, just put anything in without really looking at things in detail, because you don't want a refusal. If you've got all this stuff, you want it to be properly presented to the Home Office. You could do that yourself, or you could ask them to get a lawyer, an agent in Pakistan to do it as well. Does that answer your question, or can I?
It does. Thank you very much. Quite detailed reply. Thank you very much.
No problem.
The paperwork then, especially from Pakistan, when it gets scanned, does it have to go together in one go? So do we scan over here, or do I have to send my paperwork over there to them?
What I tend to do is, there's two options. No? It can be scanned and uploaded, and it can be scanned and uploaded any time up to the date mum is going to go and submit her passport. So you've got a few days, you might submit your documents, scan and upload them, she might scan and upload something as well. The second option is, if scanning and uploading is too complicated, then all you do is your mum pays an extra £40 or something online, and then that allows her to take physical documents to the visa centre, and they will scan all the documents and upload it. So there's two options: self-upload, and the other option is you pay a bit extra. When you're applying, it gives you the option, do you want the visa centre to scan and upload your documents? If you select that, then when your mum attends the appointment, she takes all her physical documents, they scan and upload at the visa centre. So you have both choices.
Right, brilliant. And when we upload the documents, it goes to an application. So whether the documents are from here or from Pakistan, you can upload them to the application. Is that right?
Anybody can do it, because there's like a portal. There's a login, so anybody can log in, and you can scan and upload yours. If they could scan and send it to you, email it to you, and you can upload, or they can upload it themselves. It's just you have a login, and you basically log into a website, and you just upload it. The
Do you
website's
get that
not very-
login? Sorry, do you get the login after you
at the
submitted
end,
the
yeah.
application?
So once you've done the online application and you've paid for it, then you book an appointment for your mum to go to the visa centre. It's at that stage that you've got the email address and you've got a login as well. So they give you that to book an appointment for your mum to go to Islamabad, as an example. So it's that website where you can upload your documents.
That's brilliant. And the sponsor letters, or do I need to write a sponsor letter for her, or the cover letter will do it?
Yeah, I mean, just a sponsor letter from yourself. Literally, 2-3 paragraph letter is fine. If you want to go to a lawyer and do it, that's fine. But you don't need to. You don't need to do that. You can actually do the letter yourself. So the letter would be quite straightforward. Basically saying, I'm sponsoring. My mum's coming to see me. She's going to live with me. She's going to come for, let's say, 2 months. Don't say 6 months. Just say 2 to 3 months. And you know, I work for this company. I have savings of this amount of money, and she'll stay with me. Something as simple as that. I'm sponsoring my mum to come here. This is the duration. This is where I work. This is my savings. She's going to stay with me. There's no precise wording for that. Just a general letter is sufficient, along with your supporting documents, your passport copy, your wife's passport copy, 3 months wage slips, 3 months bank statements, some proof that you own your accommodation deeds, or if you're renting, a tenancy agreement. As long as you've got savings of about, let's say, £1,500, maybe £2,000, that is sufficient. So hope that sort of answers your question. I think you've just got disconnected as we were talking. Apologies for that, but that's basically what you need to do from here. I think if getting your mum's documents from Pakistan and all that is too complicated, ask them to go to a reliable lawyer, reliable advisor who can do the online application, who can check their documents and upload their documents their end, if they're able to find somebody reliable. But you do need to be careful. Slight mistakes, documents which contradict each other, can cause significant problems, because what the Home Office is looking for is, in the application, if you're saying, look, your mum or your dad has this amount of income, they want to see documentary evidence of that, and things need to match. If there's discrepancies, that's what actually leads to refusals. You've said one thing, your documentary evidence doesn't match with what you've said. That is what leads to refusal. So you do need to be careful of that. Now, visitor visas is problematic. There's nothing you can do apart from, get the best application together possible and give it a go. And, inshallah, pray that you get the visa. But there you go. That's a brief summary of putting a visitor application together. Now, today when we started looking at immigration applications, in particular spouse applications, and with more focus on the financial requirement. We've only got a few seconds left, so what we'll do, inshallah, when we're back next week on Monday at 6 o'clock, we'll look at that in greater detail then. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.